Hello and welcome to a super special and likely short, depending upon what he does, episode where we find out what happened to Luitpold when he disappeared into the Demon's Bowl. Okay, so let's bring up Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hello.
Excellent. Right, so we're just going to dive into this one. We're recording this just before episode 14. So, we're keen to see what's going to happen. I'm going to be popping this one up to all access backers for a few weeks. Then we have our next break in about 3 weeks' time, I think, and we'll drop up for everybody else. So if you're coming at this 3 or 4 weeks later wondering what the hell actually happened to him, you're about to find out. We don't know either yet. Father Luitpold is blind. Now, we know this already. However, blindness means different things in different places. In the mortal realms, we've covered it to some degree as to exactly how he experiences the world around him. However, when we're in the middle of a magical circle with the of ravens, not crows, make sure we get the correct corvid, ravens echoing through his hearing and the distant sounds of the, let's call them spirits, those who have already passed on and are now finally passing on, echoing through his mind, and then he finds himself almost emptily stepping forward. There's no great passion for it. There's no great need for it. It's an empty step without any real thought, as then consciousness hits hard. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? But maybe a beat or two too late. Around him, as we've discussed, are the standing stones of the Daemon's Bowl that were put up, presumably, by Corobreth's folk. They're still there, but they are perceived differently. Beforehand, they were almost shining to his otherworldly senses, so to speak. They were quite clearly delineated, but no longer. Now they're dull. And beforehand, there was a crater around the entirety of the ring, which he could perceive quite clearly, and what lay within that crater was almost impenetrable to his senses. Everyone else saw the inside of the crater. To him, it was just the equivalent of darkness. But he's no longer in a crater. So let's give ourselves a metaphor for how he's perceiving things, because I think that's going to be far better than trying to loosely describe something that neither of us have actually experienced ourselves, because we don't have holy visions.
It's true.
So do we? Imagine his holy visions are normally high definition, fully perceived environments. He has moved to a washed out, almost painterly, watercolor version of reality.
Trippy.
And it bleeds at the edges. It's not quite HD down to SD, oh no, we've gone pixel. It's much more fluid than that and wobbly at the edges. So those... It
feels a bit more like I'm getting something like in the Spider-Verse movies, like that, where the art style changes. Like,
I think that's a good place to begin, yeah.
Like
so change the art style in your head as those stones, which to him were very clearly defined. They were like pillars around him of sensibility, so to speak. In the distance, he was aware that there was cliffs. He was aware that there was emptiness, and that emptiness in some respect was palpable to him, because he could perceive that emptiness. He has a sight that's quite unlike ours, where we don't perceive emptiness, we see through it to the thing at the distance. For him, he was quite aware of the vastness of it as an actual...
The spatial awareness of it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that would make sense. I'm presumably not in space
now it's gone
anymore.
Flat.
Yeah.
And oddly flat around him. The stones themselves have dulled down incredibly. A little bit like someone's taken the dimmer switch and wobbled up all the edges. Everything has got traceries of... Now, you can choose your own colours, because it isn't colours. It's a different version of perception. But the colours have dulled down, and they're different. The edge is almost like looking through water at it. And it drifts out, and occasionally drifts back, and drifts out, and occasionally drifts back. And it feels a little bit more organic. As if the very world around him, the very place he happens to be around him, is alive. In a way that he doesn't perceive when he's in the mortal realms. And a very real sensation he isn't anymore.
Am I like in a god? Is that what the gods' realms are? Are you like in them?
Theological theories abound. Exactly where is he? What has occurred? What happens when you drop into a place that has been tainted for perhaps a very long time by pure magic and has opened some form of portal, and that portal has been shut? The way is shut. Surrounded by stones to ensure that its negative influence couldn't expand outwards. Reality itself, according to everyone else, because they could see that crater and they were discussing it, it just looked normal. But it somehow attracted and caught a ghost, and it couldn't move on. It was stuck. And through your deeds, it could. And
as did all the others as well, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And as you pass through this area, well, you're not dead.
So I am stuck.
So you don't move on.
Yeah.
You have no handy raven to guide you to another place. Instead, you have found yourself somewhere else. Now, many a theological scholar would suddenly become very excited.
Yeah. I mean, there's a
where am I?
You know, I'm sure there's a tiny little part of his brain going, this is fascinating. I'm going to reflect on this later when the panic has ended.
So there's a couple of other things to immediately describe. It's flat. Beyond the stones, there's no real sense of depth. There's no real sense of anywhere else. There's no sense of wind prickling against his flesh. There is no sense of actually anything. And it's about then he realizes he's stopped breathing. As if he's caught in a moment.
Interesting.
And he can't breathe. Not only can he not breathe, he can't talk, he can't... But he can think. Because he's thinking. I mean, therefore I am.
He'll immediately obviously be attempting to speak and...
But his thoughts are there. And he feels palpable. In that,
and like is... Like, does sound work? Like if he claps his hand?
Goes in echo. As his foot moves slightly in the dust beneath his feet, and he feels the shifting of the sand, and it... And another foot movement.
I'm in ASMR land.
Pop, pop, pop. Clap, 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 clap. Oh. But no voice. You move your own flesh to see if it's... And you can hear it. Definitely something. There is something palpable here. You have physicality. And the ground scrape. It appears to have physicality as well. But beyond that circle of loosely ill-defined watery stones, I'm not really aware if there's anything. We're not quite Neo moving into a white landscape with a single chair, but it kind of feels like that, in that there's no depth. There's no way to tell if it's really far away or if it's right beside you. It just is. There's a small part of you as well that wonders, what would it look like?
Yeah. What am I missing?
What does this look like?
Although possibly he's not missing anything, but yeah.
Do yourself, before we start tackling all of this, a quick, I'm going to drop an intuition.
Well, you may have noticed I obviously put my old dice in permanent dice jail, got my new holy dice, and boy, how did they work well. 7 successes.
Good job. Well, with 7, I'm going to say something slightly different, and perhaps worrying.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Back in the dice jail.
It reminds you of standing on the precipice of nothing before the eye came. That sensation that there was something down there, but you couldn't tell what it was. It's a very similar sensation.
That kind of existential, like it's beyond you.
Yeah. And what is perceived by whatever senses you have is nothing more than an approximation based upon material senses attempting to understand something immaterial that is quite beyond it. Quite beyond your abilities or capability to fully understand.
Which weirdly means, by his own theological logic, the stuff he's perceiving other than the sound and hearing, the stuff he's just perceiving, may be more accurate / reliable than the other stuff. In the same way that the visions are more reliable without the eyes, then therefore what he's perceiving without his other senses may be more accurate, although what the hell accurate means in a context like this.
And with 7, I'll also add that the stones pierce through from the other side because you can still see them. An interesting factoid, you're not entirely sure what it means, but the stones definitely probably are sort of here too. And you're not sure whether passing beyond their periphery, beyond their circumference, beyond their boundary is at all wise.
Yeah, no, I mean, that feels like a very bad idea.
And there's another part.
It feels like he's not gone where he thought he was going, let's say.
Our last potentially horrendous conclusion. After all, you got a lot of successes. Maybe this is what she saw when she was trapped here for however long she was trapped here for.
Oh, no.
Maybe you have died. Maybe your body's just lying there collapsed in the middle of the circle.
In which case a raven should be along any moment, one would hope.
So what's his plan?
I mean,
sitting in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, like he'll do all of the obvious things that I know are not going to work, but he would try it anyway. So things like trying to turn around and retrace his steps, see if he goes back. If that doesn't work, go back to where he was standing before and walk backwards through it in case that works. And go, right, okay, I'm assuming none of that works.
It does not. And it's worth adding a few extra details as well. Every time he moves, there's that odd, echoey, thumpy, over loud sensation thrumming through his ears. As he does it more and more, he becomes more aware of where the sound is coming from. His own body. He's sensing the sound passing through him. He's not sensing the sound passing through the air.
Because presumably there is no air if there is no...
Quite. That appears to be the case. He's just sensing the dull thuds of his own body pushing through things, the movement of the sand hissing on the ground and passing through his own body up towards his own particularly sensitive ears.
That is freaky.
And it does make for a solid sort of boop, boop, boop whenever you walk. Also, when he doesn't move, it's exceedingly unnerving because you are so used to the sound of your breathing, the sound of your heart thrumming in your ear as the blood pulsates through you. Nothing. What is also unnerving is when you move and you can hear the slight hiss of your own flesh moving, the wet sounds of your body shifting as its weight moves, thud, thud, thud of your footsteps, largely drowns that out until you stop and you just move slightly, perceiving things, and it echoes slightly within your head as well.
And I imagine because he's wearing his armor and everything as well, there'll be all manner of like weird clanking echoes almost after as everything else like settles after he stops moving
back into place.
Don't like it. Right. Well, I mean, the thing that feels real and feels connected to the world is the stones. So I guess he will approach one of the stones. He's definitely not going beyond it. He's taking great care. And he probably, because the sound is so unsettling, will do his level best to walk gently, just to spare his ears the...
He creeps forward. Thump, 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 crack, crack, screech, screech, crack, crack, crack. Even the movement of his own arm, shuffle, 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 shuffle. And it's right in front of him. And as he goes closer to it, he's both more aware of it, because there's so much more of it close to his senses, but at the same point, more aware of just how indistinct that it is. As he gets closer, he's more aware that he's perceiving through it as well as the edges of it. He's perceiving into it. He can sense swirls of something moving through it, pulsating lines of something shifting through it. Again, the without actually hearing it. But it's one of those things that when you see it, you can almost hear it. You know those ones when you see a thud and your brain immediately goes, thud. And even if there's no actual thud there, you still hear the thud. And it's a little bit like that. You can almost hear the breathing without hearing a thing. It's a part of you that wonders if you'd hear more if you touched it and you're not sure you want to, but...
Well, that's what I'm... So God, as he grapples with that, he will remember that in the real world, he has the capacity to sense the flame Vulric. Mm-hmm. Can he sense it now? I was kind of hoping that might give me a clue as to a way back home.
No, nothing.
Right.
That's probably a half meditation prayer moment.
Yeah,
as he's sitting down.
And I think more than that. I think standing up. He's sitting right. Standing up, leaning on his hammer.
Nothing. And I do mean nothing. No sensation of anything beyond what's directly in front of him.
Can he even get into, that headspace he gets into when he prays, where he's like totally silent and there's nothing?
Do yourself a cool test.
Cool test.
Yeah.
3 successes.
He closes his eyes and he tries to find the darkness. So this is where we go into almost montage mode. Motherfucking montage. Because time, strictly speaking, doesn't exist. And he goes through many different things at once. Yet simultaneously in order.
I'm very Dr. Manhattan.
Quite. As he is praying, he is realizing he's not hungry. He is realizing he hasn't felt hungry for a very long time. He's also realizing he's forgotten what hunger is.
Pretty soon he's going to forget what time is.
He's realizing that he's prayed and there is no answers. There is nothing out there. The gods have gone. He has been abandoned. He remembers that bothering him once. But he's moved past that also, because there is no real time here. And the very act of doing a thing moves you beyond the thing. Or something.
Something like that.
He remembers despair and how that used to obsess him. He remembers a really simple thought, the desperate need for a really good shit, and how it's gone. And how he obsessed over that for, it could be an eternity, it could be a second. He has no conception at all. But as different thoughts pop up in his mind, they are also, to a degree, deeds. Which, at one point, really worries him, because in the darkness of our soul, we think all sorts of horrendous thoughts, even when we try not to. Just the very thought of, what will I not do today, turns into thinking about that thing that you're not going to do. The very fear that many a Sigmarite runs through as they're flagellating themselves. And that is not allowing the dark gods to get in through their thoughts. It's not just about the physical boundaries, slapping a book of Sigmar on your forehead to stop them getting into your head. But that's one step towards trying to protect the mind. That fear of thinking the wrong thing and how it can lead, under certain circumstances, to corruption. But he's got bored of that too. Bored, not the right word. Past isn't the right word either. It's just a thing that has occurred and came to nothing. Because there is nothing. Yet still, he's just somehow standing in front of this stone. Has he prayed? Has he done all these things? Has he gone through an eternity of time or just a heartbeat? The answer to all those things are quite beyond a material mind. But what is certain is that he has a material mind because he has a clear line of thought. And it is consistent. And he has thought all those things. He has concluded many things, all of which are, I'm in a place where none of this seems to reach me. That's a nice, easy conclusion. And add in all your own stories for crap that he has thought, worried about, got over, and ditched. Because nothing is here. It's empty. Perhaps a classic example of limbo. Perhaps something else. There's a small part of him that wonders if this is perhaps the periphery of Mor's realm itself. When you move to Mor's realm, is this what life is? Just one enduring emptiness. There's lots of theories. He's got lore theology. He knows that the realm of Mor is not exactly a great sounding place to visit. You know, pop over there for an eternity of nothing. Your mind just switches off. Your soul is protected from the depredation of the dark.
I mean, that's better than an eternity of torment.
Correct.
But
particularly given what she said the other time.
I don't believe any of that.
Why would you? So here we are, at the edge of a stone, having gone through 1,000 thoughts and gone through none.
I mean, he's totally going to touch the stone. I mean, there's very little. And I guess what his hope is that if that's coming from the real world and it's something magical, then maybe that's like a route back, maybe?
Yeah, that might be it.
It's almost certainly not it, but that's what he's hoping for.
And touching it. And you can hear the definitely an odd, almost breathing noise inside the stone. And a slight sensation of hunger.
Wonder if
And
that's...
it's silent.
Wonder if that's why it's called the Demon's Bowl. Wonder if that's the demon.
There's a bunch of other stones. Yep. In a big round circle. Interestingly, though, no crater. You get no delineate. Indeed, reading down, it doesn't rise up towards those stones. It's kind of flat.
That's weird.
And there's definitely a boundary, you think, maybe a periphery. Because the flatness of your vision, much like when you're on the outside of it, you had a flatness and it was almost like darkness. Here it's just a flatness at the edge. Maybe there's an entire world lying beyond these stones. But maybe you'll never get back. But maybe you've been here forever already. Maybe that's where time lives.
Well, I think the first thing he'll do, if he reasons that probably the periphery is the same size as it was in the Demon's Bowl,
Seems to be.
he'll put that to the test.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what he'll do to help him with that is he'll use his hammer and he'll like drag it in the dust, partly because that will make a single louder noise coming up through him, hopefully than his own disgusting meat settling noises, but also so that hopefully if he does the periphery and
basket.
Exactly, and there is something real, he will eventually come upon his own trail. And if he doesn't come upon his own trail, then it's even worse than he thought.
He spins for an eternity. For a moment, for a heartbeat, for a year, for a decade, for a century. He has every thought that he can possibly have, yet remembers none. He's just aware that he has done something. He has no concept at all of whether he's moved more than a step or whether he's gone round and round millions of times. But he's definitely tried something. As his mind reflects upon it, he's aware that he passed a lot of stones. So he has moved, he thinks.
And there's nothing like, but if he crouches down, he can't feel like an indentation.
The sand is just too loose.
Too
It's
loose to
like
hold
touching. The dust is so fine it just drifts. So maybe.
I mean, he's probably going to have to poke his head outside, right?
I mean, he poked his head in. That definitely didn't go wrong.
Well, I mean, he helped some people, you know. That's
totally.
what he does.
Yeah. He did a good deed.
And if he ends up dying as a consequence, then so be it. Like, that's what priests do, right? They help people.
They do. They die. Everyone dies. It's a part of the process.
And he can't stay here forever. So, yeah, I guess he'll tentatively attempt poking his head across the threshold, not into the stone, just to be clear, into the space between the stones. Yeah.
A real sensation roller coaster as you hit the edge and everything twists, turns, and explodes into sensory oddity. It's not a handy little maelstrom that you can quickly go, hey, I'm heading down a tip. No. It's just an overload of beyond his understanding sensation. And he loses any concept of standing, sitting, being in many respects.
I feel it's a little bit more like the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey, like that kind of moment where it just goes beyond. And
it's proper headspace, man. As then he collapses and there's definitely something beneath him. There's definitely firmament above. And he can sense Morrslieb. He can sense it, Morrslieb. He knows it's Morrslieb. It's that same familiar itch.
Can he sense the flame?
It's full. It's full. And the stones are behind him. No crater. He can sense the ground in front of him, and it spreads out around into just distance. No flame.
Right, so I'm not back home.
You're definitely not back home, but you're somewhere where Morrslieb is full. You can sense it there, full. You can almost sense the stars. As if they've got some sort of soul. You're not sure where that thought even comes from. And now there's a wind, but it's not on his face. It's passing through his mind. He has wind passing through his brain.
I mean, some would say he has that every day, but well, it's more meaning nothing between the ears.
I went for the fart joke. So, wind passing through the brain on the other side of these stones, bewildered, confused. He has no idea whether it's been forever or a few heartbeats, but he has definitely made some form of progress.
How is sound now?
He can't hear anything.
Is there air now? Like, is he breathing?
He's not breathing.
So he's still not breathing. And if he takes a step forwards?
Yep, the sounds now are very dull. Where beforehand he was hearing it through him, his material sense was still working. There was just nothing to hear beyond. All he was getting was the reverberations within himself, massively repeated again and again. Now, it's dead and dull. Sound is leaking. It's not just stuck within him, but can't hear a thing. Again, it's almost like there is no time. There's no moment for the sound to pass through, leaving him quite bewildered because of that, but he has his, let's say, holy visions. Yeah. He has an extrasensory sight that allows him to perceive, and he knows where Morrslieb is. He can sense the stones. He can sense the ground dull and almost lifeless around him, and the distance. Now he's got a sense of distance.
But he doesn't have any sensation of like heat or cold or anything from...
No, not at all, actually. It's not hot. It's not cold. It's nothing really. It's like, if you just push your hand through normally, you can feel the air moving. Yeah. You can feel the air moving back to your face when you just fan. None of that. There's nothing going on. Even hitting himself feels dull. Yeah, dull. Like it's come through several filters before it's finally reached the windy brain. You can almost hear the movements of oh. Problem with the windy brain is every once in a while the sounds sound like they might be less static and more conscious.
That's not great. It's not great. So the stones are still there behind him?
Yep.
Are they like they were inside the circle, all watercolory and bleedy and...
No, not quite. As he sort of turns.
But nor are they bright and shining and holy.
Yeah, no, they're back. They're dull. Their edges are a bit off.
And if he was going to touch them here,
and just the slightest,
but not as loud as sound.
Slight breath working through the stone itself. Again, though, if it wasn't for his other sight, I mean, normally you would hear your hand moving up to it. You would
hear
the sound would give you a thump as you hit it. None of that. It's dead. But you can hear that sort of almost echoey sound passing through your body. But here, again, much deader. He panicked once. He knows he's panicked several times.
He's panicking right now.
Yeah. And he knows he has collapsed at points. And there's a small part of him that can see thousands of himself around this circle, having gone through so many different things. There's a small part of him that thinks he might be ranting and raving at one point.
Oh, almost certainly.
But another part of him that's looking at him coolly with nothing but contempt for something that ranted and raved. And another part of him that's looking coolly at that, that's looking coolly and seeing it as pathetic and young.
Jesus.
And foolish.
Well, hopefully that part's got some bright ideas, because I got squat.
It has no bright ideas. The cumulative Luitpold, that Luitpold that sits there, is kind of worried that he's in exactly the same place that she was. But again, every once in a while, that awareness of something passing through his mind.
I mean, and it can't be the same as she was, because he got out of the circle and she couldn't get out of the circle.
Or she couldn't get out of the circle into the real world.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I inferred that she couldn't get out.
I'll give an or there.
Yeah, that is fair.
As an additional
I might have made an
thought.
assumption there. Well, he will attempt prayer again. I think that's in his nature.
So I think that's worth dwelling on as well, because particularly for someone who is filled with a certain level of purpose and faith that has come ever since Sigmar came upon him, to have that so what feels irrevocably removed is something to consider, both in terms of what does that mean as an implication. What does that mean about the mortal realms? What does that mean about Sigmar? What does that mean? But what's certain, that Godhead ain't here and has no connection to this place at all, bar perhaps you, assuming that you're even connected anymore, but you don't feel like you're in any way connected to anything other than your own body, your own self, and that's it. And the occasional passing through your mind. You can do an intuition test.
3 successes.
That
4
last
successes.
one was delightfully hungry.
Oh, God.
Indistinct, but nevertheless hungry.
That's not good. I mean, the good news is it passed through me and didn't eat me.
That's true.
So maybe it doesn't know I'm here. Or maybe it can't eat me. Maybe it's Luitpold intolerant.
So, any other plans?
Well, I mean, beyond just setting off into this metaphysical wasteland and hoping he eventually finds his way home, but I mean, that feels reckless. Like, at least there is his one point of reference geographically is a circle. I suppose, thinking about what he would do, what Gerhardt would say if Gerhardt was here, he's all about the scientific inquiry.
Yes.
Let's try going back into the circle just to see if he goes back into the same place or if he can even get back into the circle.
Pushing up towards the circle. And this time, it's palpable. He can feel it tingling through his fingertips.
Which is what it felt like in the real world.
It is.
Yeah.
So clearly, his earlier assumption that somehow the stones were also here and doing something here is probably correct. These stones are not just in one place. They are in multiple places. Whoever put these up, Korobeth's pals, they definitely did something to this place, presumably for a reason. They were connecting to here for a reason. Perhaps it was to drain it out. Perhaps this is their spiritual exhaust pipe, for want of a better description, where all the nastiness that they were controlling was just filtered out into this emptiness. And maybe that's what you're feeling every once in a while. The hunger of what was passed through. It's dissipated over the course of no time at all.
And that's exactly it. With time being all kind of like messed up, like, it's all like echoes, but an echo of a sound that's maybe not been made yet.
As eventually he almost tumbles through it because he didn't realize how much pressure he was pushing against, feeling it until he was pushed, and he's back into exactly that same timeless, odd bubble. The sounds massively increased, but this time slightly different because he can hear something. Chanting. Low chanting. In a language he has no concept of at all. It's low and there's multiple voices. Men and women, you would guess, chanting away.
But he has no perception of the people, just hears the voices.
Yeah.
And so the voices seem to be coming...
And then a scream, but it's distant. It's not something to give you shock, so sorry, no loud screams from me. For all I do love doing them, it's more about chanting, and then thou shalt not defeat me, Korobreath. And you are aware you didn't hear that. It was pure thought, and it was understood. Thought that was given nothing more than expression by the material realm. Utterly certain it meant one thing. Reminds you of... Do you have a lower theology test?
Yes, only one success.
One success,
yes.
Then we'll leave it to a single detail. Reminds you of the Word of Sigmar, or it was as it's often referred to in some of the older classical texts, the Logos, the divine word. How there is a certain certainty that comes from the divine. And
well, that's kind of like what he's had when he had the moment about sight and visions, and when he had the moment that Alamenawith was key. Like that, he just knows a thing. Yeah.
There's a certain certainty in this. It's not so much speaking words, it's being understood by the material realm. Again, filters upon filters. But something is trapped. And Korobreath, regardless of what he may have said, was there.
And he knows it's the same Korobreath. It's not like an ancestor with the same name.
It's as certain as it is. Indeed, you can even hear his voice now, chanting as the stones are put in place.
Does he sound like he has a broken jaw?
No.
So it's definitely from before. Yeah.
And then that same voice creeps through his consciousness. There is something here. And then another voice. There's someone else here. There's someone else here. Let us feast. Feast. I'm so hungry. So hungry. You feel a presence pushing against you.
Oh no.
And a slight wibbling of reality right beside you. And you don't have much sense of reality as it is already. No. So that's not the most uncomfortable thing, but not the least comfortable either. It's just a and then a howl. But so distant. Its soul has already been consumed by another. Not all. Not all. Not all. There's another one goes, there's parts of it we could eat.
Yeah, I'm back out of the circle. No thanks. No thanks.
Whoa, and as you fall backwards, almost to the edge, as you're trying to push away from these wibbles, you fall back through the eternity of confusion as you collapse on the sand, the hollowness. And to one side, the other side, the other side. Darkness. No, darkness suggests dark. Absences. There are several absences around you. It is here. It is here.
Back in the circle. Back in the circle.
You need to give us your soul. What remains of it? What remains of it? What remains of your soul? Oh no, you're on the inside. They're still talking to you. I shall just take it, says a voice. And you feel a pressure. That's one way of putting it. And it causes your heart rate to suddenly pound from nowhere. Boom, 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 in your chest. As a palpable sound. First actual real heard one, not one passing through you, goes, Roar!
Well, that's good. I mean, I think...
It's corpus! It owns its own corpus! I can't eat it! As another one goes, it understands us. It understands us. As the other one goes, it understands us. The word, the word, the word!
So
how?
For all that he rationally suspects it will do no good, I mean, he is going to be praying to Sigmar like there's no tomorrow.
I think that's fair.
The thoughts and attempting the words even though there is no air. But, yeah.
Again, we're in a position where there's no real proper time. This part of the conversation, the prayer, them discussing amongst themselves how to consume you, and coming to the conclusion that every time they attempt to, they can't. Eventually comes to an end with a realization on their part. It's trapped. It's trapped. It's trapped. It lies between. Because they speak, and they don't appear to be capable of not expressing their thoughts, as if their thoughts themselves are their essences. And the very fact that they think means that they are perceived. And the very fact that they're perceived means that you can hear them. And you don't see them, you perceive their thoughts. And you don't actually hear them as voices, but they definitely have different qualities. And you definitely know what they're saying. It just sort of sits in your head and shakes a little. Like they've seen you.
Well, they sort of have, right?
Yeah. And they hover and they move around. And they're always there. As one makes a realization beyond just simply, you're there. We can send you back. I will send it back. I will send it. No, I'm hungry. I want to send it back. Let me send it back. I will send it back. There is only one way back. I will speak to it. No, I will speak to it. As they do this for some time. Oh, there is no time. Forever. Until eventual steps are made in the thought process. Because they don't have the same step-by-step that you do. But you're perceiving them in a step-by-step nature. One of them's already made the conclusion before you really truly understand what it is. Brains don't work in this particular environment very well. It has a corpus, a soul that it owns. A corpus! A corpus! It has corpus! And a shadow! A shadow! It has a shadow, let me consume the shadow! And you feel pressure on you again. And screams. It must be given freely. It must be given freely. To speak word is truth, to speak word is truth. If it gives freely, it gives freely. Give freely. Let us consume you. I will consume you.
No.
Unsurprisingly, a fairly strong no from these nothings. To these nothings. This continues also for whatever time means. And then one voice out of them all says something which is different in tone. And you have as much certainty of its truth as you have of any other truth. They can't lie. It's impossible. Because to lie is to not be themselves. They can't not be themselves. They are what they are. And they are creatures of hunger. They are creatures of need. They are creatures of little more than that, you think. Perhaps if they had a material form, they would gain material needs. They would become something more material. You've thought that more times than you care to think of. And you've dismissed them multiple times. Until one says something that sounds not necessarily acceptable, but at least sounds relatively sensible. And for the first time, he actually understands why anyone would ever make a deal with a demon or a spirit. because there are certain things they cannot break. They just can't. They are actually, under certain circumstances, not just trustworthy, but incapable of not seeing through their side. And if he wasn't who he was, he just simply wouldn't know that. They would just be pressures and things that he would have to make a decision about. Are they trustworthy? Are they not? But he knows that everything that they say, it's not so much that it's true, it's what they are. And the begrudging, really disliked step that one of them makes to make an offer. Don't offer. Don't! Your hand to return. Your shadow to return. Your hand to return. Shadow! I want its eyes. It has no eyes.
Yeah, you can have my eyes.
Ears. I'll take its ears.
No, you won't.
Hand. Shadow. Ears. Hand. Shadow. Ears. And he finds himself in a very odd place where he knows he's got himself spirits who can see him through, but only here. But it will cost him either his hand, his shadow, or his ears.
Don't particularly want to lose any of those. Really?
Hand?
I mean, a shadow. What's the theological implications there of not having a shadow? A shadow's a physical thing, isn't it? How could it have my shadow?
How could it possibly take your shadow? And what would that mean? I mean, is that much of a loss?
I mean, or does what that mean is it has possessed my shadow? So I have a shadow, but it's not under my control because it's with me at all times.
You have a way of finding out. It can't lie.
Well, I'll attempt to ask it then.
What do you express?
How could you take my shadow?
There's sudden excitement. Oh, that's me! That's me! It wants to feed me its shadow!
No.
It
It is curious about whether such a thing was even possible.
says, I would simply eat your shadow. It would be gone. Let me eat your shadow. I will return you. I will return you. I don't want to return you. I want to consume you completely, but your soul is already consumed. I have to return. I will return you for your shadow. You will need to be inside. You will need to be inside the hex. An old word for sex. An old word for magic. An old word for it all being wrapped up together, and you're not sure which it intends.
Are there 6 stones in the...
No, there is not. In fact, on this side, you're not sure how many there are.
But back in the real world...
In the real world, you think there was 8. Pretty sure there was 8. You didn't do that whole, sit and count because it was black on the other side. Yeah. You couldn't see right the way around. But you'd guess, given that you'd had a good wander around them, that there was probably 8. I would eat it. I'm so hungry. Just let me eat your shadow and you can return. Give me your hand. I will eat your hand. It says you do not need your hand, a portion of your corpus. A small portion of your corpus. Just grant it to me. I shall eat it and you shall return. You do not want to give it your shadow, no, for you will have no shadow. What is a shadow? It is mine. It is mine. Don't you dare try to stop it taking my shadow. I'm so hungry.
I mean, I wonder if I could bargain with them.
What's your plan?
They could take my hair. What does he have that he doesn't actually need? Losing a body part is quite extreme. Having already lost his eyes.
Yeah.
There is this running gag that Luitpold is going to be just taking a pair of lips and boots. That's all it's going to be by the end of the campaign. And
lips and boots.
For all that the shadow may
Holding a hammer.
For all that the shadow may be harmless, it also may be deeply not, metaphysically. I don't know. What they mean by shadow might be something else. And also, if he literally has no shadow, he's going to get burnt as a witch, right? Like, that's going to happen in the Warhammer world.
It's definitely going to be an odd thing, isn't it?
He's going to be constantly facing that kind of prejudice.
Do yourself... Got Lord of the Empire?
I do.
Yeah, that'll do. We're going to need that for that.
Yeah.
No. Then let's leave that one off. fortune point if you fancy, in case you want to pick up a go. I'll respawn your fortune points at the end of the next one as well. So
Sorry?
You've got fortune points free. I'll just respawn them at the start of the next
In
one.
which case,
The start of the session is about to start. So, this is the sort of place where fortune points are definitely real. In fact, not only is it real, this is the sort of place where you can use fortune points without having to worry about limits. You can just keep on re-rolling.
Because time is...
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you just keep on re-rolling...
No, until your fortune points run out. You have a limited number of them.
Oh, okay.
But you can re-roll a roll that's been re-rolled with fortune points.
Got you.
Quite.
I mean, because time has no meaning, does that mean that we're chill and taking our time?
Oh, yeah.
In this case, 5 successes.
I'll allow it advantage to sit.
Yeah.
At some points you will be hyper not, but some points you will, and we can take it.
Eventually you'll be at 5.
Oh, 5 is a lot. This is something that you're aware some light wizards have. No shadows. They have dismissed their shadows for whatever reasons. You don't know why. It's only coming from Lord of the Empire. But you know that some light wizards have done this, and some light wizards have no shadows.
And light wizards feel holy.
Yeah, they do.
But are they holy?
That's also a good question.
Like, are they the Cabal ones that have got rid of their shadows, for instance?
That's also a very good question. I am not providing you with any more detail than that.
And there's nothing in lore theology to do with shadows.
Yeah, the wrong area. I mean, there's lots to do with shadows in general, but not really that's going to jump out for...
Here's a random one.
Yes.
Is there anything in his dwarf lore to do with what dwarfs feel about shadows?
No. Yep, there's shadows. That's a very practical part of the physical reality. Light shines down, can't pass through you, causes a shadow. Ba-da! Pretty much it as far as dwarves are concerned. They're very practical folk. Very literal. Don't even need to roll on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like if it were to consume my shadow, like, is it like consuming lots of tiny parts of my body that means that light is passing through me? Even though I look like I'm physical, at the same time, light is also passing through me.
Again, you can ask.
Well, but I did ask and it didn't seem to understand. I was like, what do you mean by eat my shadow? And it said, we'll eat your shadow. I'm like, what does that mean? Well, I suppose that's what he will think. He will think that rational, physical thing about a shadow is darkness that's caused by light not passing through your body.
No, not your corpus. Your shadow. I will eat your shadow, not your corpus.
Yeah, but the shadow is caused by the light not passing through my corpus.
There's a pause. No, your hand! I need your ability to act! I want your hand! And then another goes, no, ears. As it goes, no. Just your shadow. Nothing more, nothing less. Cannot eat corpus if you eat shadow. I'll eat your corpus too if you wish. Corpus is shadow. It says.
No, in capital letters. No!
Shadow.
I just don't understand. I don't understand what that would mean.
I think it's fair to say neither does he.
Yeah, and I'm like, if it's the only fucking way out of here, is it the only way out of here? He will ask them that very clearly.
Silence.
Is there another way out of here? Back to the corporeal realm.
Long silence. This goes on for an eternity and a moment. An eternity and a moment. And then laughter. Laughter from all sides. And the awareness that all of them want out. All of them. But they have no corpus. They can't. They're stuck. They have nothing to have on the other side. And that immediately makes him aware of one thing that there's a part of him was worried about, at least. They're not following the classical demon model in that they're not possessors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they're looking at him thinking, I can possess this fellow. And he's not aware of that. He doesn't know that's because his soul has been consumed, whatever that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And thus they couldn't move into that space or whatever it may be. But it's the corpus part. In terms of their bargaining, they're only taking bits of his soul because his corpus, that is, pardon me, not his soul. Bits of his corpus, because if they took his corpus, they couldn't return him. which means they can't eat him, but they want to eat a bit of him. So they'll eat a bit of the corpus. One of them's latched on shadow, and it appears that there's almost a restriction to their bidding, as in each one only allowed to bid one thing.
Although one of them did just say your shadow and your corpus. So.
Well, that's one thing extra. But others aren't attempting to offer the shadow option, because that one's offered the shadow option, because that's its nature.
Yeah.
But that one's nature is also greedy, and it went immediately for more, but it's also realistic. The second you said no, it pulled back. Shadow. They are incapable of moving past their natures. The ones that want to eat you completely give you no offer. Because they just want to consume you. They're just prowling around, trying to figure out a way through.
And it would be too much to hope that one of their natures would be to return me without any cost.
That appears to be the case. You don't get anything for free.
That would be helpful.
Upon thinking that, whenever you come to the realms that lie beyond, nothing comes for free. Everything requires an expenditure. As another one in the background goes, like walking. Like walking. You can't walk without expending your energy. Like singing. Like sleeping. Everything costs. Everything costs. Your shadow. Your shadow. Your ears.
Was that two of them asked about my shadow there?
Same one twice.
Same one twice. All right, okay. Well, I'm not giving him my ears.
Screw the ears.
The ears is gone.
Acute sense hearing was hard enough to get his.
Exactly. Hilarious as well. Although actually, you probably wouldn't need to do much drawing because the blindfold covers most of his ears. None of them seemed intrigued by his offer of hair.
No. It seems they do not want to make you bald.
Yeah.
Your hair does not carry a great deal of utility to them.
And while he could survive without his left hand...
Hand, shadow, hand, shadow, hand, shadow.
I mean, I just don't... Like, the problem is, like, objectively, shadow sounds better. But then there is the worry that it is something more. But as you're saying, they can't lie, and they're saying that it is literally just your shadow. I just wouldn't have a shadow anymore. And in a magical realm, and some of those light wizards do it.
Yep, they do. It's a known quantity. Yeah. It is something that can potentially happen. You're aware of it, at least.
And as somebody who sometimes literally glows with holy light, presumably at that point he has no shadow because he's his own light source.
Light, yeah.
So maybe it's a bit like that. Maybe he can rationalize it like that. That it's almost like he's glowing from within. Maybe a shadow isn't what people think a shadow is. Maybe in the Warhammer world, the shadow is something else. That sounds like something Gerhardt would like to think about.
Yes, it is. Yes, it does.
I think it's fair to say, like Luitpold is on the horns of a dime I can't make up. So I, as Andy, I'm going to make a decision based on what I think is coolest for the story. And he's absolutely going to give up his shadow.
Damn straight.
Because I think that's cooler.
It's interesting because it's not immediately a decision. In that there's a point when he knows he's going to do it. And that's the point it happens, not at the point when you would normally utter it. Indeed, often when one is making a deal, you know what the deal is going to be before you even begin. But if that had been the case, that's when it would have occurred, the very moment you thought that's going to be the deal. And the moment he knows is the moment that his shadow is consumed. And is also the moment he wakes up in the centre of the circle. And with that small aside, crazy as it may be, we come to the end of that tiny little tale.
What have I done?